Hey you guys, it's your favorite Max guy Andy here. So I've talked to you guys in the past about your winch maintenance and about how important it is. So today I'm going to talk about a different topic, and that would be steel cable versus synthetic cable. Now, it's been brought to my attention that there are a lot of ATV parks out there now that don't allow steel cable. They actually have signs posted, and they say you have to use synthetic winch cable in order to run your ATV here. So I thought I would shoot a video and I would run through like how easy it is to change out from a steel cable to a synthetic cable, but I thought I would also talk about the differences between the two so that you guys that are new to the industry understand what the fundamental differences are. I've got all my stuff set up here right now, and I'm about to swap mine over, but I wanted to run through this with you guys really quick. The biggest difference between steel and synthetic cable is abrasion resistance. This is the big one. A steel cable is very abrasion resistant, which means when you wrap it around a tree, a rock, whatever, it is very resistant. It's not going to fray, it's not going to break when you wrap it around a rock or a tree or anything like that. Whereas synthetic cable is a little more susceptible to that. Pound for pound tensile strength, when you're pulling on it, this cable is as good as steel cable. Steel cable, however, weathers the elements a lot better than synthetic cable does. Synthetic cable is susceptible to UV light. It will break down the fibers in this cable, which means if you're going to be out on long runs in the daylight and stuff like that, and you're going to be doing this daily, you need to make sure that you're paying attention. These cables need to be replaced about every year, maybe 2 years. Whereas a steel cable, you don't have to replace it but every 5 or 6, and that's if it starts to get rust on it. I've talked to you guys in the past about how dangerous rust is to steel cables. With steel cables, you spray some cable lube on them, and they're generally good to go, but they weigh a lot more, and when they're under tension, those cables are much more dangerous to you physically. An example would be a steel cable under a tremendous load will sever a person's body parts. It will lacerate a person really, really badly if it fails. This will not. It'll hurt, it might bruise you, it might give you a rope burn, but it is not going to cut you in half like a steel cable. But that's why a lot of ATV parks are going to this, is because it's much safer for a human being than steel cable is. So when you consider it like that, yeah, maybe it's worth it, maybe it's not. The strength is all still there. You can pick these up on Amazon for 20, 30 bucks. And so they're not that big of an investment every year or so. The other thing with synthetic cable is if you get it dirty, if you get it soaked, wet, you've got to let it dry out. You've got to clean your cable. Whereas steel cable doesn't really care. It's going to accumulate some rust, which we all know that happens. Spray it down with some lube, it's fine. The weight savings is a big deal. This is 50 foot of synthetic cable, and it weighs less than a pound. 50 foot of steel cable on any ATV, you're talking 3-4 pounds. It's a lot heavier than what this is. So each has its merits and its drawbacks. With all that being said, I have my setup. So I'm ready to change the Max over and put a synthetic cable on it. Another thing you guys need to know, synthetic cable does not like roller fair leads. The fair lead would be that unit on the front of your winch that has rollers on the sides and on the top and on the bottom. These don't like that. They like what's called a Haas fair lead. this is what's recommended by the manufacturer. So you have to change out your fair lead if you're going to go with a synthetic versus a cable. And if you go back, you don't want a Haas fair lead on a cable, on a steel cable winch. So I have all of that going on, so I'm going to swap all of that out. It's not a big deal. It's really quick. The other thing that I got is a cable weight. This is actually works as a stopper. So when your winch comes in contact with it, it stops and doesn't allow it to go back and eat up your fair lead or anything like that. It makes it really secure, but it's rubber and it's hard and it's heavy. The other thing this is good for is if you are in a winching situation and you don't have a lead blanket or something to throw over a steel winch, you can slide this down and it will work as a winch weight. They suggest that you do this even with the synthetic cables, but it's more important on the steel cables because those are the ones that'll hurt you. Okay guys, the first thing you're going to want to do when you're dealing with steel cable is put you some gloves on. The stuff is hard, it's abrasive, it can definitely tear your hands up. So make sure that you do that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get out our remote control for our winch. If you have one, if not, you're going to have somebody manually operate the winch for you from inside the cab. Plug our winch in. And we're going to start letting this guy out. Now I'm going to let this thing out, but just so you guys know, I will be coiling this up and putting it in storage later on. You can turn your clutch and just pull it out. So mine's kind of tough to pull out, but that's okay. Moral of the story is, guys, you can do it either way. Okay. So when you get to this end point where the cable actually feeds into the drum, now is where your control comes in handy. You're going to want to rotate it back around to where you can see the set screw. But if you look right there, that's where your set screw goes in. So your cable feeds here, and this is the outlet. You're going to want to loosen that set screw. Then your cable will come out full. Now, as you can see, I'm loosening the set screw, which is right here. And this guy will come right out. Might take a little pulling, but he'll come on out, right? So my winch, which is a super winch, 3,500 pounds, takes a 2.5 millimeter for the set screw. That's what that guy is right there. So we're going to take him on out. And then we're going to get ready to feed in the synthetic. Okay guys, before we hook in our new synthetic line to our winch, we're going to have to change the fair lead. Now I've told you guys, you have to have a Haas fair lead in order to run synthetic cable on your winch. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these roller fair leads off and we're going to install a Haas fair lead on the front of this guy. So that's what you're watching right now. We're going to take this guy off of here. We're going to make sure we keep the bolts, keep the lock nuts, and we're just going to take that guy off and set him off to the side. Then we're going to put a Hawes fairlead on here. He'll line right up, as you guys can see in the video. Okay, and it's the same process. You just tighten that guy up where your other fairlead was at. So there's our Hawes fairlead. I'm going to feed him through the exact same way that the cable was fed through. I'll take him up here like this. You guys can see that. I'll feed him right in there. See if we can back our set screw out a little bit more. Well, guys, I finally got him in there. It helps if you stand him up like this and then rotate your winch backwards. So now we're going to tighten everything back down. And then we'll roll this guy together, and then we'll have a synthetic winch on the Max. Okay. Alright, he's good. He's in there. Okay, so now basically we're just going to wrap our winch. Now you see how nice that wraps up? So the last few feet are going to be a protective cover. Okay? So see how this is black? This is just going to wrap right over top of what you've already wrapped. Not a big deal. It just protects your synthetic winch. That's perfectly alright. Okay, so you guys see how it works now. I'm your favorite Max guy, Andy.